The bully slapped a 12-year-old black boy across the face. The crack hit the diner like a gunshot. Every voice died, every hand froze. No one noticed the man in the corner until he stood up, slow, eyes cold. The boy's father, the mafia boss. The lunch crowd at Benny's diner was noise and grease, forks clinking, laughter rolling over the hiss of the grill. In the back booth, Miguel Torino, 12 years old, dark-skinned and soft-spoken, traced patterns on his milkshake glass while his mother went over the grocery list. To everyone else, he was just another kid in a hand-me-down hoodie. Then the door burst open. Derek Thompson and two of his friends strutted in, varsity jackets still damp from the rain. They laughed too loud, the kind of laughter that makes a room smaller. When Derek passed Miguel's table, his shoulder clipped the boy's. "Watch it," Miguel said quietly. The laughter stopped. Derek turned, grin twisting. "What did you say, kid?" Miguel looked down. Nothing. That nothing lit the fuse. Derek stepped closer, his friends egging him on. The waitress, Dolores, froze behind the counter, half-filled coffee pot trembling in her hand. "Say it again," Derek sneered. Miguel didn't. He didn't even breathe. And then came the sound. Sharp, sudden, unforgiving. The slap cracked through the diner like a gunshot. Every conversation died. A fork clattered to the floor somewhere near the jukebox. Miguel's head snapped to the side. A faint red print bloomed across his cheek. For a second, the only noise was the hum of the freezer. Dolores whispered, "Oh my God." Derek smirked, satisfied. "Teach some respect, right?" No one moved. At a corner booth near the window, a man set down his coffee cup. The porcelain touched the saucer without a sound. He folded his newspaper once, neatly, eyes still on the page. "Sir," the manager started, voice thin, "let's not—" The man stood. He was tall, coat tailored, silver cufflinks glinting under the fluorescent light. His expression didn't change as he crossed the floor, just the kind of calm that made people get out of the way. He stopped beside Miguel. "Are you hurt?" Miguel shook his head, tears balanced but unshed. The man nodded slowly. Then his gaze shifted to Derek. "Apologize." Derek blinked. "What?" "Apologize to the boy." "Look, old man, I don't—" The stranger's tone didn't rise, but something in the air did. "Apologize. Now." The friends backed away first. Derek tried to laugh, but it caught in his throat. Dolores whispered to the manager, "Do you know who that is?" He swallowed. "Torino. Vincenzo Torino." The name traveled through the diner like electricity. The mafia boss. The one you didn't cross, the one who ran the city from quiet tables like this. Derek's face drained of color. Vincenzo knelt beside Miguel, straightened the boy's collar, and said, almost gently, "Never lower your eyes, for men who act smaller than you." Then he looked at Derek again, voice still even. "You should leave, before I remember what I used to be." Derek stumbled backward, nodding, whispering apologies that no one believed. The door banged shut behind him, the sound swallowed by silence. Vincenzo turned back to his son. "Finish your shake." Miguel nodded. Dolores exhaled for the first time in minutes. The tension lifted, but the fear stayed. Because everyone in that diner understood. The slap wasn't the loudest thing that happened that afternoon. The quiet that followed belonged to the mafia boss. The door's chime stopped ringing, but the silence stayed. Benny's diner, usually alive with chatter and music, felt hollow, like everyone had been holding one breath too long. Vincenzo Torino went back to his seat, straightened his coat, and lifted his cup again. The coffee had gone cold, but he didn't seem to mind. His calm carried weight heavier than any shout. Miguel sat across from him, still stunned. The red mark on his cheek had faded to a pale print. Dolores brought a glass of water, her hands trembling. Are you both okay?" Vincenzo nodded once. "Thank you, Signora." Her eyes darted to the door Derek had escaped through. "That boy, he's trouble. His father owns half the county." Vincenzo set down the cup. "Then he'll understand business." She hesitated. "Business?" He looked at Miguel instead of answering. "We finish what we start." Minutes stretched like hours. Outside, the rain returned, soft, steady, cleansing. A black sedan pulled up at the curb. Two men in tailored coats stepped out, scanning the windows. Dolores whispered, "Oh, no." Vincenzo didn't turn around. "Tell the manager to lock the door." She froze. "Lock, sir, He met her eyes, steady. "Please." The click of the bolt echoed louder than any word. Derek's friends, who had stayed behind in stunned silence, finally stood. We didn't mean nothing by it, mister." Vincenzo looked at them, expression unreadable. "No one ever does." One of them whispered, "We should go." He shook his head. "Sit?" They sat. Miguel stared at his father, unsure whether to be proud or afraid. He whispered, "Papa?" Vincenzo softened briefly. "Finish your milkshake." "But finish it." The boy obeyed. The manager shuffled forward, voice shaking. "Mr. Torino, if there's going to be any trouble—" "There won't," Vincenzo said. "Not unless someone forgets how to listen." He turned his gaze toward the window, watching the headlights blur against the rain. "Derek's father will come soon. He's not the kind to let someone else write the story." Dolores looked at him, whispering, "What story is this, Mr. Torino?" He gave her the faintest smile. "A short one, about respect." When the knock came, it wasn't gentle. The door rattled under heavy fists. A deep voice shouted, "Open up! I'm looking for my son!" Vincenzo didn't move. He checked his watch, then nodded to one of the men at the window. The bolt slid back. The door opened, and Thomas Thompson, county official, stormed in, red-faced and fuming. "Where's my boy? Who the hell do you think you are locking?" Then he saw Vincenzo. The fury drained from his voice, replaced by something colder. Recognition. Dolores stepped back, eyes wide. The entire diner seemed to tilt toward Vincenzo's stillness. He rose slowly, buttoned his coat. "You're late." Thomas swallowed. "Torino?" "Sit," Vincenzo said softly. "We need to talk about what your son did." The man hesitated. The rain outside grew louder. Because in Benny's diner, justice didn't come in shouting. It came in silence. Thomas Thompson dropped into the booth opposite Vincenzo Torino, rain dripping from his coat. The air in the diner tasted like metal, fear, and coffee. Miguel sat motionless, watching the adults the way a child watches thunder gather. Vincenzo folded his hands. "Your boy hit my son." Thomas forced a laugh. "Kids fight, no harm done." "No," Vincenzo said softly. "They don't fight like that. He hit him, in front of strangers, because he thought he could." Thomas glanced toward Dolores, then at the two men in black standing near the door. He shifted uneasily. "You can't intimidate me, Torino. You forget who runs this county." "I don't forget," Vincenzo replied. "I remember everything." He slid his phone across the table. On the screen, a still frame from the diner's security camera. Derek's hand frozen mid-swing, Miguel's face turning with the blow. The manager had emailed the footage without being asked. Fear makes people efficient. Thomas's jaw clenched. "That video doesn't leave this room." "It already left." Vincenzo took a slow sip of coffee. "I sent it to your office before you came in." For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Outside, lightning cut the clouds, blue and sharp. Thomas hissed, "You want money?" Vincenzo shook his head. "I want balance." "Balance?" "You built your name on law and order. Show me one." He nodded to Franco, the driver. Franco produced a small notebook, laid it on the table. Names, dates, debts. Every favor the Thompsons had taken from the Torinos over the last 10 years. Licenses, contracts, campaign dinners. each page a signature in bloodless ink. Thomas stared at it, color draining. "You keep records?" "I keep promises." Miguel whispered, "Papa." Vincenzo's expression softened only for him. "It's all right, Figlio mio. He's learning what real shame feels like." Thomas slammed his palm down. "You threaten my family again?" Vincenzo's hand flicked once. The two bodyguards stepped closer. The sound of their shoes on tile was louder than the shout. "I don't threaten," Vincenzo said. "I warn. Your boy crossed a line. You raised him to believe there wasn't one." Thomas looked toward the counter, desperate for an ally. Dolores lowered her eyes. No help there. Finally, he sagged. "What do you want from us?" Vincenzo reached into his coat and set a small envelope on the table. Inside, medical bills from families Thomas's office had ignored, permits denied because they couldn't pay. The same apology you expect from everyone else. Pay what you owe. Fix what you broke. Thomas swallowed hard. "I can't do all that." "You will," Vincenzo said, "or the people you robbed will find out how you did it." The older man pushed back from the booth, shoulders hunched. He looked smaller now, like a coat with no man inside. Vincenzo stood, buttoned his jacket. "Take your son home. Teach him the difference between fear and respect. If you can't, I will." Thomas nodded quickly, motioning Derek toward the door. They left without another word, their silhouettes shrinking into the rain. Dolores exhaled. "Mr. Torino, you could have—" "I did enough," he said. He dropped $100 bill on the table. "For the mess." Then he turned to Miguel. "Let's go, Figlio. The lesson's over." But as they stepped into the wet street, Vincenzo's gaze stayed on the envelope. He knew this wasn't finished. Balance was never simple. Morning spilled gray light through the clouds when the black sedan rolled up outside Thompson's office. The same man who had strutted into Benny's diner the night before now sat behind a desk covered in unopened letters. He looked up when Vincenzo Torino entered. No guards this time. He hadn't brought muscle, only the quiet that followed him everywhere. Thomas rose halfway, still wearing the same arrogance that had cracked in the diner. "You shouldn't be here, Torino. We settled this." Vincenzo closed the door with a gentle click. "We didn't settle. You walked away before you learned anything." Behind him, Miguel stood in the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder. The boy's expression was calm. Too calm for 12. Thomas barked, "You brought your kid?" Vincenzo shrugged. He should see what apology looks like. The official's jaw twitched. "You think you scare me?" "I think fear is the only language you ever learned." He stepped closer. On the desk lay a copy of the morning paper. Front page, County Official's Son Attacks Child in Public Diner. The photo from the security video filled half the page. The headline did the rest. Vincenzo placed 2 fingers on the paper. "Your name prints easier than mine these days." Thomas's shoulders sagged. "You leaked it." "No," Vincenzo said. "I told the truth to someone who likes ink more than blood." The man sank back into his chair. "My career's over." Vincenzo leaned in, voice even. "Then maybe you'll have time to raise your son." Miguel watched silently, memorizing the way his father's words cut without shouting. Thomas rubbed his temples. "What do you want now?" Vincenzo took a folded document from his coat pocket. "A scholarship fund. You'll seed it. For kids in this city who can't buy safety like yours could. You'll call it the Respect Initiative. You'll sign it today." Thomas stared at the paper, eyes flicking over the numbers. More than a payoff, less than ruin. "And if I don't?" Vincenzo straightened. "Then the rest of the footage finds its way to every screen that sells outrage. But if you do, people might forget your name long enough for your son to learn his own." Silence stretched. Then the scratch of a pen. Vincenzo took the signed document, folded it once, and handed it to Miguel. "Keep it. Proof that words can weigh more than fists." The boy nodded. Thomas looked up, voice hoarse. "Why are you doing this? You could destroy me." Vincenzo paused at the door. "Because destruction is easy. Balance takes work." Outside, the rain had stopped. The city smelled clean for the first time in weeks. They walked toward the car in silence until Miguel spoke. "Papa, did we win?" Vincenzo smiled faintly, the kind that never reached his eyes. "No, Figlio. We just reminded the world who loses when respect disappears." As the sedan pulled away, sunlight broke through the clouds, painting the wet street silver. Behind them, Thomas Thompson watched from his window, realizing that power didn't always roar. It could whisper, sign, and walk away. By noon the next day, the city had already chosen a side. Screens in diners, phones in office towers, barbershops and bus stops all played the same clip, grainy but undeniable. A boy, a slap, and silence that followed. The headline, "Mafia Boss's Son Attacked in Local Diner." Vincenzo Torino sat in the back of his car, watching the replay without expression. Miguel beside him looked out the window, his reflection ghosted in the rain. "Do they know it was you?" Miguel asked quietly. Vincenzo shook his head. "They know what I let them know." Franco, driving, smirked. "The Thompsons are drowning in press, reporters at their door, sponsors pulling out." "Fear travels fast," Vincenzo murmured, "but truth travels further." At Benny's diner, Dolores wiped down the same booth where it all began. The manager switched channels nervously, afraid of customers recognizing the place. 2 journalists had already come by asking for comments. The bell over the door jingled. Vincenzo and Miguel walked in, unannounced. Conversations died instantly. Dolores's eyes widened. "Mr. Torino, everything's gone crazy since people saw what respect costs," he finished gently. He motioned for her to sit. "You kept quiet when others didn't. That matters." She shook her head. "I didn't do anything." "You did," Vincenzo said. "You didn't look away." He handed her an envelope. Thick, heavy. "For repairs. And for the courage most people lose when they hear my name." Dolores looked down, speechless. Outside, across the street, reporters had gathered near a black SUV. The flash of cameras lit up the gray afternoon. Vincenzo opened the door for Miguel, but a voice called from behind. "Torino!" Thomas Thompson stood there, shoulders hunched, eyes ringed red. The world had carved 10 years into his face overnight. "I came to apologize," he said. "Publicly." Vincenzo turned. "You already did, privately." "That's not enough," Thomas said, pulling a folded statement from his coat. He read aloud, voice cracking. "To the Torino family, and to every child taught to bow to arrogance. I'm sorry. My son forgot humanity because I taught him power." The diners at the window listened in silence. The reporters caught every word. Thomas stepped closer, lowering his tone. "You win, Torino, but please, let this end here." Vincenzo studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "It ends where you decide to rebuild." Thomas nodded, turned away, cameras chasing him into the street. Miguel tugged his father's sleeve. "You forgave him?" Vincenzo exhaled. "No, I spared him." He knelt, eye level with his son. "There's a difference. Forgiveness is for saints. Mercy is for men who remember." As they left the diner, someone held the door open. Dolores again, her voice soft. "Mr. Torino, people will talk." "They always do," he said, glancing back at the room. "Let them remember the silence that came after the noise." Miguel smiled faintly. "The quiet that belongs to the boss?" Vincenzo's mouth curved just enough to count as a smile. "Exactly." The car door shut, sealing the world out. The storm had passed, but its echo stayed. And for the first time in a long time, respect felt louder than fear. A week later, the storm had left only puddles and headlines behind. The clip from Benny's diner had burned itself into the city's memory. Every feed had replayed that slap until the sound no longer shocked but reminded. In the middle of it all, life at the Torino house returned to its deliberate rhythm. Quiet breakfasts, long silences, lessons that didn't need words. Miguel finished tying his school shoes, the bruise on his cheek almost gone. Vincenzo stood by the window, coffee in hand, reading letters from parents he'd never met. Thank yous, apologies, fear disguised as respect. Miguel asked softly, "Are we still in trouble?" Vincenzo smiled faintly. "We're always in trouble, Filio. It's how we use it that matters." Outside, a delivery truck pulled to the curb. The driver carried in a crate stamped the Respect Initiative Fund. Inside, school supplies, scholarships, donations. The foundation Thomas Thompson had been forced to sign now bore Miguel's name on its letterhead. Dolores arrived soon after, apron folded neatly in her hands. "Mr. Torino," she said, standing in the doorway like someone entering church. "They're reopening the diner. New sign, fresh paint. Thought you might like to see it." He nodded. "Let's go." The diner smelled of fresh varnish and second chances. Sunlight caught the chrome fixtures, the same booths now scrubbed of fear. A small framed photo hung by the register, a black and white still of Miguel and Dolores on that first quiet day after. Beneath it, a plaque read, "Respect is still served here." Regulars looked up as the Torinos entered, but no one froze this time. A few even smiled. Miguel slid into the corner booth, the same seat, now his by legend. Dolores poured 2 coffees. "On the house," she said, grinning. Vincenzo raised his cup slightly. "To silence," he said. "To silence," she echoed. The doorbell jingled again. Derek Thompson stood there, smaller somehow, hands buried in his jacket pockets. His father waited outside by the car, eyes down. Derek swallowed hard. "Mr. Torino. Miguel. I wanted to say sorry. For real this time." Miguel looked at his father. Vincenzo nodded once. The boy stood. "Okay," Miguel said simply. "Don't do it again." Derek nodded, relief flooding his face. He left without another word. Outside, Thomas placed a hand on his son's shoulder. The gesture looked like both apology and release. When they were gone, Miguel turned to his father. "You think people really change?" Vincenzo took a long sip of coffee, eyes on the street. "Sometimes fear teaches faster than kindness, but respect, real respect, lasts longer." He set a folded envelope on the table addressed to the Respect Initiative Fund. Inside was his own donation. Dolores caught his eye. "You don't need to prove anything, Mr. Torino." "I'm not proving," he said quietly. "I'm building." As they stepped outside, the afternoon light softened over the city. Miguel looked up at the sky, clear and clean, and smiled. Vincenzo rested a hand on his son's shoulder. "Remember, Figlio, power isn't how loud you make people listen. It's how quiet they stay when you stand." The camera of the world lingered on them. Father and son walking away from the diner that had once echoed with a slap, now filled only with calm.